Hello, welcome to Melrose Votes 23 candidate question and answer period. My name is Teodros Kiros, professor of philosophy at Cambridge at Berklee College of Music and host of African Ascent International on MMTV. In this program, we are interviewing each of the candidates for mayor in the upcoming preliminary election. Each interview was conducted separately, but each candidate was asked the same range of questions in the same order, with the proviso that they limit their answers to 3 minutes or less. After all the interviews were complete, this program was edited to have each candidate's answer to the question grouped together. None of the responses have been edited. With all that said, let me give my guest, a potential mayor for the great city of Melrose, to introduce herself.
My name is Medeiros Solano. I am a candidate for mayor here in Melrose. I've grown up in Melrose my entire life, over on Bay State Road. I love Melrose. I've just been honored to have so many opportunities here afforded to me by living here, a great education, lots of economic opportunities and opportunities to have so much access to culture as a kid and as an adult. And I just want the next generation to have this same opportunity and more. And that's really why I'm running and why I've been involved over the years. I served on the school committee for 2 years, and then as the ward alderman, now we know that as city council, for 3 terms, and then at large citywide on the city council for another 3 terms. So altogether 14 years of government service. I ran for mayor 4 years ago, didn't quite make it, but I think it's very important, this job and what's happened in the city in the last 4 years, and I really want to try again. I feel that I can make a difference, and I really believe if I get there I will make a difference. So.
All right. Now, what are some of the biggest problems that Melrose is facing? How are you going to deal with them, Monica?
Thank you. Yes. So there's lots of challenges that I'm sure that are going to lie ahead. But first and foremost, and I think what's my highest priority to deal with is our budget. Right now we have a very large structural deficit on the school side, and it's affecting the whole budget. I'm not sure whether you're aware, the budget that we have right now has been passed by the city council and the mayor and the city council, and it has a $2.7 million structural deficit in the school side of the budget. We think that that deficit might even be more if we saw at the end of this fiscal year that just passed in FY23 that there was a lot of transfers at the end of the year that were requested from the school department to pay for last minute things. A lot of costs were transportation and special education related, which do often fluctuate, but the accounts that we usually use to pay those out of the offset accounts were tapped out. So there's a good chance to me when I look at it that if we use those accounts up this year, that there's a good chance we're going to use it next year. And I think a lot of the city councilors agreed. There was a lot of discussion that that structural deficit might be as high as $3.5 or even $4 million by the time this year is done. That's really not a good way to move forward, and it's borrowing from our future, and and kind of just hoping that we have the money, and it kind of affects everything else along with it. So I want to work right away to start and prepare a 5-year strategic financial plan for the city to go ahead, and that means going back and reviewing our expenditures for the last 3 to 5 years and really looking line by line at what we've spent our money on and why, and what we budgeted and how did that compare, and then projecting forward to see what we really need, and making sure that we have realistic numbers for those costs moving forward, and forecasting that out. At the same time, forecasting out what we are looking at for revenue coming in, and then if we have a gap, and I suspect that we will, we need to look at it internally and see if there are ways that we can restructure, if there's other ways that we can get some revenue, and see if we can close that gap.
Okay. Well, as you know, Monica, schools are really the backbone of city life. And I hear this rumor that our middle school is chaotic. Our schools are not in good condition. And now there is the budget deficit that you're speaking about. How are you going to cope with this briefly?
Briefly. Well, I think it's, first and foremost, one of the most important things we have that the next school committee, which the mayor sits on, is tasked with, is hiring a new superintendent. We have an interim superintendent right now. It's the superintendent that runs the everyday business of the schools, that makes all the hiring decisions, and that really manages the budget on a day-to-day basis. The school committee is charged with managing that budget, and again, the mayor sits on the school committee. So again, I think the budget and having that kind of experience and financial experience and aptitude and intent to try to get the numbers down is very important. But it's very important who we hire to be the next superintendent. And I'm the only one of the candidates who served on a school committee and who's gone through the process of hiring a superintendent, and a good superintendent who helped the district grow through some challenges. It's not a one-person job, however, and I think there's a lot of smart people in Melrose, and the mayor can have different advisory committees, and I want to create a mayor's advisory committee on education to tap the potential that's in our community and to get people who are experts in finance, who are experts in education, who are experts in HR, to come together and look for some new solutions. And if they have good ideas, these are things that I'll just be one member of the school committee, but that I can bring to the school committee, and hopefully we can make some improvements.
What's your vision of what you would like Melrose to look like 20 years from now?
Well, I mean, Melrose is a beautiful place. I would like to see it stay beautiful and clean. I think that, again, make sure that we are being proactive with planning and making sure we're maintaining our buildings, our sidewalks, our streets, our roads, make sure that we're keeping them clean, make sure that we are on a schedule to maintain them. I think we have to be very proactive about that. I think we have to plan out and make sure that we keep maintaining those buildings. Obviously, we're going to grow. That's part of life, right? But as much as possible, I'd like us to keep some of that character and charm that we have. So I think it's preserving as much as I'd like to see. I'd like to see us preserve our single-family residential neighborhoods and preserve that housing, and try to, as we grow and build new housing, make sure it's in smart growth and in the character that we'd like to see. And I want to make sure that we preserve our green spaces, all throughout the whole city, and keep them available for all of our residents to use.
Okay. As you know, Monica, there has been a lot of social media chatter about old and new apartment buildings that are being contemplated on. Relate this to problems that is going to produce with respect to parking, height, and decreased views and increased congestion. What is your opinion of them? What do you think about these high-rise buildings? Not to forget affordability.
Yes, absolutely. So, I served on the city council for a good long time, for 12 years altogether. And, we worked proactively. I had seen in many other communities developers coming in, and we saw it a little bit in Melrose too, but developers coming in and going into residential neighborhoods and knocking down, buying up 2 or 3 houses, knocking them down and building big complexes. I didn't want to see that. So I, along with our other counselors and the planning board, we made some zoning changes to create what's called the Rail Corridor Overlay District, and we set into that zoning the idea that we would try to encourage our developers to develop in an area that's close to transportation, so that there would be fewer cars. And we put in a lot of safeguards there, including setbacks from different properties, requirements to have more pervious pavements so that water and there's drainage, which would actually improve what's there on a lot of the parcels right now. We put into place requirements that if there were, for every 10 units of housing, there needed to be at least 1 visitor space. So I think those kinds of things were very important. Unfortunately, a lot of these developments that are coming in right now are not using that zoning that we we wish for. And we also allowed, in that area, there was no retail use allowed. We added that as an allowable use with the hope that we'd get some mixed use developments, and we really presented a plan and a vision. I'd like to see more things like that. I'm concerned when I see some of the new developments wishing to, the environmental impacts on some of these are things that you can't take away. If we start to blast, for instance, you can't undo that, and it could have effects on the water table and runoff. It can have effects on the homes in the area, in the neighborhoods. So as much as possible, I want to see that minimized. I think if we do have new developments, we have to recognize if we're going to have less parking, then we have to recognize that people are going to need a place to be safely, picked up from ride shares, have deliveries dropped off. I mean, there's lots of cars that still come to a development, even if people don't have cars themselves in these days. So we need to make sure that we're planning that and being realistic about what is needed.
Okay. As you know, there have been different kinds of leaderships over the years by mayors. What is yours going to look like?
I want us to have an open government. I want to involve people in the decision-making process that affects them. I see too often politicians, they make decisions and then tell people what the result is. I want to get people involved, the stakeholders who the decisions are going to affect, and talk to them about, you present a plan, but talk to them in the process about what your plan is and get them and their feedback involved. I want to make sure that we're open, that people feel welcomed in our city government, to participate in it, to be employees, to have freedom of ideas and free open discussion. And I really want us to have a sense of openness, a sense of transparency. For all the years I was on the city council and on the school committee, I think I was very much known for wanting to see the details and wanting to make things available to the public. And I'm committed to doing that if I am honored to be the next mayor.
Okay. Well, Monica, let me be honest with you. Every time I walk into the premises of City Hall, I feel unwelcome. It's a very cold place. The building is fantastic. Everything else is not. What is your leadership style going to be like so that this could be attended to? Pledge to the city that you're going to do something about this.
No, absolutely. I think we need to have a customer service oriented approach at City Hall, and I'm not sure that we do right now, but I know that starts from the mayor's office and works its way down. My very first job, aside from babysitting, my very first job was at McDonald's as a cashier. I learned from the beginning that there are customers, you have to attend to them, and be kind and courteous and try to solve their problems and give them what they want in an efficient manner. And I think that's what we need to do from the city, from the top down. The residents are our customers and consumers, and we need to make sure that they feel welcome. They are the ones who are paying our salaries. It's their tax dollars, and we need to make sure that they feel that they are appreciated, and again, that their opinions are welcome. And as much as possible, I want to create that environment. I do think that means, again, starting from picking up the phone and saying, welcome. And when you walk in, there should be a sign that says welcome. I'm glad to see, I know we talked about this 4 years ago, right?
Exactly.
About having...
And nothing changed.
They have added a greeter downstairs. I think it's
very
a start.
Superficial. Yeah.
I think it's a start. But I think, even that setup it can be a lot more welcoming, just with a sign that says welcome. And that initial saying, welcome, how may I help you? How may I help you? I think we have to have that attitude, and it needs to come from the top down. And we need to embrace the fact that we are a public entity, and everything that we do, it's, sometimes it's a little uncomfortable to be in the public spotlight, but everything that we do is the public's business. So we need to make sure that we are comfortable with that, and again, from the top to the bottom, and it's very important.
Okay. What will be your expectations as to how the different city departments interact with local citizens and businesses. As you know, small businesses are fleeting Main Street. One wonders why. How are you going to reverse this trend and bring more small businesses? What steps will you take?
Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, so much of it does go back to our budget and making sure that we're managing the money that we have well and in a respectful manner to the taxpayers and looking forward. Because every time that we raise taxes, you know, all of our residents feel it, including our commercial sector. There's usually a shift that our commercial taxpayers pay more. Our commercial segment in Melrose is only 8% of our total property. It's very, very small. So we want to encourage them to feel, you know, welcome and involved and to do things as much as we can, again, to streamline things. But it's, you know, I think it's important that we really look to make sure that we're not raising our taxes more than we can, keeping our water and sewer, you know, infrastructure as efficient as it can too, because that can be a big cost for our small businesses. Yeah. And, you know, just in general, trying to do all these things to keep the city up. I think we can have some more celebrations. I think, you know, and some smaller ones, and throughout the city. I mean, Main Street is important. It is the hub. It's what people think of when they think of Melrose. But there's lots of other little business districts all throughout Melrose. Right. You know, and I think we need to bring some more continuity in how we're caring for those and making sure that, you know, if we do get a little extra money, maybe we can put in a Victorian lamppost here and there, you know, and sort of tie them into being part of our community, moving our celebrations around to different areas and sort of opening people's eyes up to the rest of the city that they may not always touch.
Now, Monica, do you think Melrose is sufficiently diverse? What are your thoughts about that?
I think it's a lot more diverse than when I grew up, sufficiently. In other ways, I think, in some ways. In other ways, I think it's a lot less diverse. I think people feel, I think we see a lot more ethnicities and racial diversity than we did have, say, 20 years ago. It's still not enough, probably. And I think people are more open and welcoming to different cultures than they were. I do feel in other ways, in terms of, I see many times people sort of afraid to really have open conversations, and I don't know that we're having enough diversity of thought and ideas, and especially in our actual city government. And I think that we have some room to grow there, on, you know, kind of on both sides. And I mean, obviously, I mean, you look at, in terms of diversity, you know, we have practically zero employees who are employees of color in the city. So I mean, there's a huge thing to go, huge improvements need to be made there to bring it at least in line with what our residents look like, right? But in terms of our residency, I think that the community has improved. I think our city, you know, structure, and I could talk for a lot more than 3 minutes on how we could improve that. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Would you support then an exclusive office of diversity and inclusion that you're going to fund to do this well?
I don't think we need to do that in order to do this well. I think we can do a lot more with what we have. I think we need to be proactive. And again, I think this comes from the mayor's office, and it's going out into communities of color, and encouraging people to get involved with municipal government, right, to be teachers, to be firefighters, to be, you know, city hall staff, and to take that and choose that career path. I think we have to get out, and this is just beyond even Melrose. I think this is in the whole state. We need to do this, but it can start with me. I'm happy to go out and do it. I think we can also do things like, I had worked for the town of Norwood. One of the things we had begun doing is, you know, having one person, when we're looking at resumes, taking away the names and the addresses of the employees. So we're kind of taking that piece of inherent bias out of the process. You're just looking at somebody for their qualifications only, instead of looking at how their name sounds or you know, what town they come from and making judgments on what that might entail, for instance. I think there are things that we can do there. I see, and I don't like to see sometimes the only people who are of color or of minority status are the ones who are in the diversity office. I think we need people of minority status in all of our positions in government, and I don't think relegating somebody to one spot is the way to go.
Okay. Now, what will be your guiding philosophy as to how, when, and if citizens can help with any aspects of Melrose? Suppose, for example, that I want to be part of the school committee.
Yes.
How would you make that possible for me? Because I'm an educator. That's what I do for a living.
Yes.
And I live in a city that I love. And there are many others like me. How would you facilitate that?
Well, I would start by telling you that you can run for office and reminding you of what's required, and it's not very much. You can pull papers right now until I think it's until, I don't know if it's until Friday. It's pretty soon. You can pull papers still to run for school committee, Teodros, but anybody who's interested. You know, this should be open to all of us. The threshold is very low. You can only need about 50 signatures in order to get on the ballot, and maybe don't quote me, but it's pretty close to that. It's not a huge number. You can get on the ballot and you can be a candidate. I think that's one benefit that Melrose has, is that we have a later election cycle, and I think that allows more, you know, it keeps the cost of running for office down, especially for the lower races, and I think it is a lesser barrier to entry, and I think that's very helpful in order to let people of all different backgrounds get involved and step up and run. Otherwise, I think, you know, again, we need to be proactive in, you know, when we meet people, and I tell people now, especially in terms of some of the development questions, the mayor appoints so many different boards and commissions. If you are interested in serving on one of these boards and commissions, sometimes we just can't even fill it. Come forward and ask, and we'll, you know, try to post these positions, but it's talking in the community and making sure people are aware, they come forward, they ask. It's when community members meet somebody and they're really great, that they know that they should tell that person, why don't you get involved with city government, because we could use more people like you.
Okay. Now, in your view, what is the mayor's role on the school committee?
Well, and I'll tell you, I served on the school committee before we had the charter change, and the mayor was not a member of the school committee. In the past, when we've reviewed the charter, I have felt that it would be better not to have the mayor on the school committee. However, that's not the decision that has been made. And I will tell you right now, with the situation that we're in, I think the most important job that I will have as mayor right now, at least in these next 4 years, is to serve on that school committee. The school committee, you know, is tasked with 3 things: setting the policy for the school, hiring the superintendent and the business manager or finance director, and managing the school budget. And obviously right now we need to get that school budget under control. That is of the utmost importance, so that we can make sure that we're being responsible for the kids, for our future, and for the future of all our city services. And you know, that's such an important role. Again, I know we talked about how important the superintendent is. You know, we want to make sure that we have retention in the schools. The superintendent and who that is, the superintendent then goes and hires all the building principals. It is responsible for all the hiring in the schools, and that person sets the tone for the whole district. So it's really important that we get somebody who's a collaborator. And
okay, now let's talk about the proposed public safety buildings, about which you know. Yesterday, the City Council approved putting the debt exclusion on the ballot this fall. Do you support that?
I'll tell you, I have never supported a increase to property taxes above the 2.5 limit. I have to say, I think this is the case where I am going to support it. I know we need to handle these buildings. I am sort of horrified that it's taken so long, with especially Central Fire, to have some action on this. This was one of our top priorities. It's one of my top priorities when I ran 4 years ago, was the condition at the Central Fire Station. And I think people really need to understand that that building in particular is in an emergency situation. The floor is unstable. You cannot bring an ambulance into the back of the building because it cannot hold the weight. The beam in the basement where the fire trucks do now go has an enormous crack in it. This is an unsafe condition. Never mind that we have leaking in the building and so on. This building needs to have attention. There's other problems, with some of the other buildings as well, but that is the one that is first and foremost. If I were there 4 years ago, I feel I would have done some things a little bit differently, and maybe we could have taken building by building at least one of them within our operating budget without going to a debt exclusion. But that's not where we stand today, and we have this huge structural deficit in the school side. So we don't have the money to do it. We need to do this project. I think that moving forward, everything is probably going to get more expensive than it is going to get cheaper. I think it's fairly a good plan in terms of how we would go about doing building by building. And again, I don't think the construction costs are going to go down, and this is something that we need to do. The debt exclusion is different from an override, where it's just the debt for that building only, so it's almost like having a mortgage payment. That is what the taxpayers would pay above the 2.5 limit, and the money can only be used for the debt payment for those projects. It cannot be used for anything else, so it is safeguarded in that respect. It is temporary, but temporary is 30 years, which for many, if not most homeowners, that's forever for them. But when it's done, the debt will fall off. I know that, and I want to say that I know that that's still a lot of money for a lot of homeowners, and I want to make sure that as a community, everybody has to make the decision for themselves about whether or not they can afford this and if they think it's worthwhile, but in particular whether or not they can afford it in their own household. And if somebody feels that they can't, I really think it's strongly that we shouldn't be saying that they're against police or they're against fire. They have to make the decision that's right for them. But the police and the fire, and in this project, we're going to keep the 3 fire stations, which is very important for maintaining response time to emergencies, to medical emergencies are most of our calls. Those few minutes can be life and death, and these services provided by the police and the fire station are services that affect all residents, regardless of age. Yeah.
Excellent, Monica. Now, Monica, what do you think distinguishes you, Monica, as a human being and a politician from all the other candidates who are running against you?
Oh, thank you.
What is so special about you, Monica?
Well, I don't think anybody else cares about Melrose, honestly, more than I do. I have dedicated myself to the city for basically my entire adult life. And by part of that, I have the most in-depth and broad-based experience that I think I bring to the job, and that's something totally different. So I have all the years of elected experience that we talked about, from the school committee to as a ward alderman, as a city councilor at large. I also served on the Mass Municipal Association. That's all of the town officials statewide. I was on their board of directors, on their executive board. I served for 3 terms as the president of the Massachusetts Municipal Councilors Association for all the city and town councilors across the state. I was appointed by Governor Baker to be on the Local Government Advisory Commission, helping to advise the governor's office on issues that affect our cities and towns. I've been advocating for more tax dollars for things like our roads, things like our education, support for our public safety professionals, and I've worked with community members, not just had the perspective of what Melrose needs, but seeing what other communities are facing, and so many of them, and what they're doing in the challenges that they face, but also the positive steps that they have taken to get past it. I bring that with me. I bring with me private sector finance experience. I worked for more than 10 years in the mortgage home financing industry. I worked at an insurance company doing compliance. I had to balance, part of my job was paying taxes and having to balance millions of dollars of premium right down to the penny, literally. Some places allowed 2 pennies. Not always my favorite because it's so detailed, but I can do it and I understand how important it is. And then after serving here in Melrose, I went to work with the town of Norwood. I worked in human resources, which helped me prepare for, help the town prepare for contract negotiations. I think, again, seeing how financially the difference between different things that were bargained, how they would affect the town. I think bringing that experience to Melrose is worthwhile and useful. And worked for the general manager's office in the purchasing department, and some more things too through COVID. But every single purchase for the whole town went through our office, from the smallest things to the big projects and the big construction projects, bidding and public construction. And again, that's experience that I have in public construction, and that I don't think any of my opponents have.
Wonderful, Monica. Any final thoughts, Monica?
I'm just so glad to be here. I'm so glad to have had the opportunity to serve the city of Melrose for as long as I did, and I'm so glad to have the opportunity to run to be mayor. It's really an amazing thing. I go out and sometimes meet people, and had a great experience recently that somebody, how I know you? Because I judged the science fair, back at Horace Mann so many years ago. And I said, in my regular life, when would I have had the chance to see these projects? And I remembered her, her son's project. It's amazing. I love it. I know there's lots to come, and I hope I get to do it. So
thank you so much, Monica.
Thank you.
What a pleasure.
Okay, it's my pleasure.